about with Evan Ball, friend of the show. And Evan, how are you, man? Good to see you
Man,
again. It's been a few weeks.
I'm doing well. Yeah, I'm glad. I'm happy to be back, man. We had a really fun conversation the first time, and I'm flattered to be considered friend of the show,
Of
man.
course,
It's
you're a
quite
friend
the
of the show.
honor.
You might even get your own bobblehead pretty soon.
Oh,
Very
watch
excited.
out, man.
Watch
Yeah,
out.
man. I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm excited to talk about Rogue One and whatever other Star Wars things come about, because as the universe goes, it's really easy to dive back and forth between the various, TV shows, movies, etc. But yeah, man, I'm looking forward to the conversation and very happy to live in a world where we know who the president's gonna be and he's going to be a decent human being. I'm sorry to bring politics on the show.
Yeah, no,
But
no, that is true. I mean, I think the whole world last week was feeling that stress of that election. Everybody, I was getting texts when it was called for a sane
Mhm.
individual who knows how to do the job. Joe Biden, that is, of course. And there's no, there's no secret here that I was not a fan of the Trump administration. But it was fun. I was getting texts from people like all over the world going, "I'm so happy for your country." It was like,
Seriously, man.
yeah, I was like, good golly, that's how bad we were looking for the last 4 years.
And it's crazy because so many of the world leaders are congratulating Biden and acknowledging the results of the election before Republicans, So it's I know that some of it is a little bit of a dog and pony show just to please some egos, but it's still continuing to look bad for that side.
Yeah,
And I know they're pretty shameless, but at some point we got to be grown-ups and acknowledge the will of the people and move forward.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, it seems kind of crazy that they would take so long to finally. I mean, it's insurmountable at this point, but
Yeah.
but other things that are going on in the world right now as things start to calm down and feel sort of normal again for like a minute. I mean,
This is just a little brief minute.
I see like Biden on TV and it's just like he's a calming force. He's like, "Hey, I'm the adult in the room. I understand what's going on. I'm in control. I'm cool about it too." And that really just pisses off Donald Trump because he needs to be out there like crazy, like a train wreck all the time, keeping us on edge. And
Yeah, he's not happy unless there's like fire and pitchforks out.
exactly.
Like just someone up there being mellow and being like, "Cool, well, he's gonna do what he's gonna do, but let's just do our jobs." It's like the worst thing for him.
He does not like it when the attention's not on him and when it's not pure chaos. But with that going on in the world, we had the Mandalorian start 2 weeks ago today, so we're on the third episode. So we're amidst Star Wars, and we were talking about Mando probably last week, and we were talking about Rogue One, and you were in the chat. You were saying you had
Yeah.
some thoughts on Rogue One,
I do.
and as a TV film writer, I'm curious about those thoughts because I have a few things that I want to talk to you about because of your expertise in writing and for television and film. I mean, you've been working on. What are some of the things you've been working on lately? Let everybody know.
Yeah. So I came up through Berlanti. I did some DC shows with them. I did Titans first, and then went over to Stargirl season 1, and then after that, television wise, I moved to a Netflix show at Ava DuVernay's company about Colin Kaepernick.
Dope.
And then, so right now, that's getting ready to get started filming. And then in the meantime, I have a couple of pilots in development that it's weird because the industry is so slow right now. So it feels like all the calls and the things I'm getting are development deals. So it's a good thing, but it's one of those things that like the projects are super open-ended and you're kind of like, they'll get done when they get done.
Right.
And as the writer, you want to be the person who's like, all right, cool, here's my draft, let's go. But the schedule of different companies, and especially because companies are like, they're hurting financially right now too. So they're like kind of pumping the brakes on things. So that's kind of been just the general life right now as the industry minus like the really big flagship shows has kind of grinded to a real big slowdown.
Yeah, I heard that Disney is down. Speaking of Star Wars and everything like that, Disney is down like $730 million for the year on average right now. So because people aren't going to pay to see movies right now, and
Yeah.
I mean, Disney Plus is what we got. That's what because everything is streaming right now.
Luckily, Disney Plus is working out for them, and I don't know if you saw the announcement a while back, but they said they were going to really focus more on streaming. Like, I don't know what that means for their big movies or anything like that, but it sounded like they wanted to kind of go all in on streaming. So we'll see what that means for their kind of model going forward.
That's interesting. I really do feel like this world that we're living in right now is like a proof of concept of things to come, because, you know, driving across town for meetings, or like how you're going to watch movies from now on.
Yeah.
I think it's about how your home setup is now, more so than what theater you go to, which I still love the theater going experience, like going out to a big theater. And now it's like kind of a dinner and a movie in one. If you live in LA, like if you go to ArcLight Cinema,
All the different theaters. Yeah, exactly.
there's so many, it's like a whole experience. But I mean, I'm definitely going to miss that.
Yeah, you know, one of the things that I kind of constantly complain to my girlfriend about is back in the day, when you'd have like a midnight screening for a big film, right?
Yeah.
Now the midnight screening is 14, 15 different showings from like 5 p.m. till 2 a.m. or whatever, right? But it used to literally be there was like a midnight and maybe a 12:30 for like the big Marvel movie or a Chris Nolan film or whatever it was. And those were always so fun because you had to be die hard to be there. Like no one else was going there literally at midnight to go see Avengers 1 or whatever.
Right.
But I remember being there and it's midnight and it's nothing but like huge Marvel fans and nerds and people who are just here to have a good time. And it's like the best movie going experience because all the cheers are super loud. The laughs are like from the gut. The tears are for real. You know, it's like all these things, people in half cosplay and everything like that. Like it's such a fun experience. And like that's kind of disappeared as they've realized people want to do that and expanded it.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of hoping that COVID doesn't kind of dilute the theater experience the way it feels like it might now. Where like only a few movies are going to make it to the theaters and a bunch of theaters are going to shut down.
That's true. And I wonder if, because there are things like this, like live streaming and Discord, if we're going to be watching shows, like, for instance, right after this, I'm going to watch The Mandalorian live with a bunch of fans and stuff like that. So on Discord, and there's voice channels and stuff. Oh, nice. We got a donation for the ACLU over there on Instagram. Hey. Thank you, guys. Remember, there's always...
What's up, Johnny?
There's always a fundraiser going on for the ACLU on the Aristotle Full Throttle Show, because, you know, even though Biden's in there, you still got to get your protections as a citizen, for sure.
There are plenty of civil liberties that still need a lot of work done to kind of be restored and take care of us. So
100%.
I support that. And I think that I admire that about you, that you're always kind of trying to be out here for a cause and motivating people to get active.
For real, man. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's like, I feel like it's not worth it unless you're trying to impart positive change on something, or at least raise some kind of awareness on something. And with that, Rogue One. Let's talk about Rogue One.
Here we go.
Yeah.
All right.
You know, I got some problems with Rogue One. But I also, right before we hit the air, you were saying you just rewatched it, and that you hated it, or you liked it more or disliked it less. What would you say? How would you characterize that?
More dislike, less. Look, it's tough because one of the things that I do by accident is I'm hardest on the movies I think have the most potential. Right. Like if I go to watch a movie that's just bad and obviously bad and kind of had nothing but an opportunity to be bad, it's like whatever, it's bad. But when I see a movie, like, to me, Rogue One could have been brilliant. And I think when you see it, there are seeds of that brilliance within it. Mm-hmm. But I very, we'll say perhaps infamously, I have a strict 2 criteria for when I'm judging a movie or a TV show or anything like that.
Interesting.
It's very clear.
What's that?
One, does it deliver on what it promises?
Mm-hmm.
Now, the promise is a combination of what happens in Act 1 and the marketing. you want to be able to avoid the marketing, but like you kind of mentally can't. When you go into the movie, you do have some expectations based on what you've seen. But two is is the movie or TV show or whatever, is it internally consistent?
Right.
You know, the rules that they set up, do they follow those rules? The characters that they create, do those characters stay in character, etc.? And you know, you're allowed to have twists and turns, but like it's got to make sense within the world that they build.
Right.
And the biggest issue for me is that Rogue One breaks number 2.
It breaks off.
And I think that's because it's trying to be, it breaks rule number 2, internally consistent.
Right.
And I think it's because it's trying to be 2 movies at once.
Interesting.
That's my main thing. If you and it flips on a dime.
Right.
There
were like extensive research shoots to Rogue One too. That
seems clear.
Yeah. There's so much in the original trailer. Like 90% of that original trailer is not in the final cut.
It's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it feels like the idea of Rogue One in the first half of the movie is, hey, the Star Wars universe is very kind of morally black and white. It's obvious good versus obvious bad, whatever, right? And we want to tell a war story in the Star Wars universe that is willing to dive into the gray area, right? The kind of dirty things that the Rebel Alliance has to do to kind of get a one-up on the Empire, etc., right? And it plays with that, with Cassian getting the kind of order to kill Jyn Erso's dad, with the kind of way they're, as a spy, you know, they're quickly executing people that like know anything about them. And that concept of a movie is brilliant and fascinating and everything I wanted out of Rogue One.
Right.
And it more or less follows that movie through the first half. But then we start getting into the second movie that they want to make. And that's the movie about this inspirational, unlikely heroine that kind of helps the Rebel Alliance become valid and get its first one-up big victory on the Empire, and goes back into this kind of like obvious good or obvious evil movie.
Right. Yeah.
And it does it in such an abrupt turn where literally, you know, they treat Jyn Erso like shit because she's a criminal and whatever, and they threaten to give her back to the Empire, which is weird because it's like, if she's in an Imperial jail and you're not acknowledging the Empire as being legitimate, then you shouldn't think of her as a criminal also.
Right.
Because as the Rebel Alliance, you're criminals also when it comes to the eyes of the Empire.
It's all gray. Yeah.
So there's that, but you do all that, you lead up to the fact that they're like, okay, they found where her dad is. He's on this planet with all his research goons and all that stuff. And they're like, okay, Cassian, go kill him no matter what. We can't let them finish this weapon. And he goes there and he minorly hesitates, but then they send a bombing campaign in. Right. The whole Rebel Alliance sends a bombing campaign in, murders her dad anyway.
Yes.
And then not 3 minutes later, she's leading an emotional speech inspiring the Rebel Alliance to do Rebel Alliance thing and take the fight to the bad guys, and she should hate the Rebel Alliance.
Right. They are responsible for her dad's death, and that's interesting.
Like, she was raised as this person who her parents were rebels, but then it got her mom killed, her dad abandoned her.
Right.
She finds out her dad's still alive and is a good guy, and then she's like, hey, let's not kill my dad. And they're like, no, don't worry, we're going to handle this. And then they kill her dad anyway.
Huh, yeah.
She should hate them. She should be like, you're no better than the Empire. You obviously aren't on the moral, like, high ground of this.
Right.
You're shitty. Star's bad, and that's kind of worse than you guys murdering my dad. So if you're not going to be the good guy, I will. And then we get the second movie, which is, you know, there's no gray area. This is bad. This is good. She's the leader. She's the unlikely hero, but she does it anyway. And, like, that turn is something that I just, like, it mentally breaks me when I watch the movie.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting that that is something that I will definitely look for the next time I watch it, because that makes so much sense. There are so many moments in that movie where it does feel like it's fighting it against itself.
Yeah.
I mean, one of my major gripe is another sort of deep character issue that I feel like is a massive missed opportunity for the movie, where you've got Krennic, who his whole motivation is like, I've got the Death Star is my baby, I'm developing the Death Star, and then you've got Tarkin taking it away from him at that last minute, so it's just kind of pulling it out from under him. So now I feel like that moment where Krennic is facing Jyn Erso, way up high, because it's a Star Wars movie, you got to be like way up high on something.
Yeah.
And that moment when they're on a showdown, I feel like it would have been so good if they reflected Krennic's respect for Galen Erso in that moment, because he knew the whole time from the very beginning of the movie, he's like, I need you, Galen Erso, to work for me. This is my baby, but I know you're the biggest badass scientist in the whole galaxy. That's why I need you. And then when Galen was dying, left to die, Krennic, even in the movie, there's like, they even signal for this, they cue for this. Like, Krennic looks back at the dying Galen Erso with kind of regret in that moment, and then kind of just boards a ship and then flies away. So in that moment when there's the showdown between Krennic and Jyn Erso, I just feel like he could have been like, Tarkin took this away from me. Screw Tarkin. I'm going to destroy this satellite dish.
Yes.
Because I respected your father. They took this away from me. This was my life's work. And instead of just being, I'm bad guy, you're a good guy, like, it would have had emotional depth if he was like sacrificed himself and it was like, give me the bomb, I'll blow it up, because or whatever it was. Yeah.
I mean, look, that would be more consistent with his character. Like, look, we get that he's extremely ambitious, right? He's clearly driven by his ambition. He wants to be seen. It's like he's concerned about his legacy, and the Death Star is his legacy. Yeah. Right? And then similar to Jyn Erso, like, he does everything right, more or less. He's like a loyal soldier. He goes and gets Erso's dad back, Galen Erso, excuse me, gets him back and gets the Death Star completed. Tarkin's in there like, I hope this shit's ready, because it better be ready. And he's like, yeah, look at it. It is ready. Boom, we blew up the city. And then he just snatches it from him. And it's kind of like, just from a managerial standpoint, why would anybody do anything good for the Empire if you're just going to get like shit on and threatened with death? Like, I know we want to make them look bad, so they got to do evil things for evil purposes. Right. But like, we've all had bosses.
I'm just over here being like, evil. I do evil things. Give me a puppy, I'm going to punch it.
Blatantly taken credit for our work before, and you're just like, well, fuck you. I'm not going to put in my hardest work if you're just going to be like, yeah, fuck this person, I did that. Yeah. Especially if you're going to demote them or do something like that after. Like, that's horrible. Right. So it actually makes more sense that if Krennic sees the destruction of the Death Star as a way to cement this legacy of him, like, it's maybe not the way he thought it was going to be, but if he's like, I'm the reason that the rebels were able to defeat the Empire, I could go down in history as this hero, as this sacrificial, like as this martyr, as you've discussed. That actually completely fits in his character.
Yeah.
But the back half of the movie is so rigidly stuck in Empire people are bad, rebel people are good, and loses all the nuance it tried to explore in the first half. That's impossible.
Yeah, indeed. We got Ricky Elliott says, what up? Jen the Fierce says, good point, Evan. We agree with that insightful, really kind of calling out Rogue One, being like, look, what kind of movie are you trying to be? This one or that one? And 420.
And look, I want to be clear. It's what I was saying when we were discussing the DC films before, right? Like, or what were we discussing?
last time around?
Batman versus Superman, or was it Justice League?
It might have been Justice League.
Either way.
Yeah. Comic books.
The
Screenplays.
massive franchise, big studio film is literally the hardest thing in Hollywood to make.
Right.
Period. Because as much as studios want to do the risky, bold thing,
yeah,
they also want to pull. Oh, we were talking about Rise of Skywalker.
Oh,
they also want to be safe, right? And we've seen these things where it's like, okay, we're gonna let you off the leash a little bit, but we have a multi-million person fan base. We know what they want. They want the same thing they've seen before. We can't really go too far out of the way. You know, like when the budget gets so high, people get a little conservative with it. You know,
the people with the purse are like, they clutch it a little tighter when they see things getting a little bit risky as far as story and character. They're like, I don't know if I want to spend the money on that.
And frankly, you know, like even them, they're subject to bosses above them and shareholders and whatever, right? Like it's a known Hollywood thing that for job security, it's so much easier for execs to say no than it is for them to say yes and put their career on the line for something that might bomb. Because then as soon as that happens, they need a scapegoat. They get this person out and it's a wrap. So it really is structurally a frustrating system that works against innovation and risk taking.
Right. And that makes sense. And it's kind of, they're sort of, I don't want to say they're playing the audience, but they are giving the audience what they want. But at the same time, the audience can be fickle about that, because they could be like, well, this was exactly what I wanted, but why couldn't you come up with something new? It's
right.
It's the same. It's a double-edged sword. We've got Escape from Post says, whoever wrote the prequel book for the film came up, this is Rogue One, with the great story between Krennic and Galen's family. The film makes Krennic a simple mustache twirler. Yeah, I mean, Krennic, I think we can agree Krennic could have had a little bit more depth to his character. It seemed indicated that he was conflicted, because he did he did respect Galen. Oh, we got another donation for the ACLU. Thank you guys very much for that. Remember to follow Evan at Evanistics. And
Evanistics,
But
you know, dude, Krennic. So, you know, we talked a little bit last time about The Mandalorian and why I think why we both like it. And I think part of it is it's because it's not the main cast of people in the like legacy Skywalker saga, Star Wars like thread. There's a lot less pressure on everybody, but the thing that I would hope Disney can get more of is that we're interested in the Star Wars universe just for the Star Wars universe. At this point, we don't need Skywalker. We don't need any of that. Like, that's all great. But I think like Clone Wars and Rebels and all these other things have shown us that if you just populate this world, this universe with more interesting characters and give them layers and depth, that we're in. It doesn't matter. Right? And The Mandalorian is kind of doing that. It's giving us insights into new cultures. It's creating new characters. We're seeing this weird kind of defunct, limping empire that's still kind of like around a little bit. And these are just really fascinating things. Like we know the main thread. It's okay to really lean into the other characters. And Rogue One kind of, it's playing both sides. You know, it gives us a little bit of like, hey, here's this whole new cast of characters, but ultimately they all have to die because we know what happens later. Okay, that's cool. And it's like, it's aware of that, so it starts to try to lean into the legacy characters later, right? It gives us more Grand Moff Tarkin. It gives us more Vader. It gives us more of these things that's like, don't forget where we're going. Yeah. Which makes sense. Like narratively, I understand like that. That's not a bad decision, but it's like you said, being able, if they had leaned into letting Krennic be kind of like an unlikely hero or a turncoat or something, and leaning into the depth of the side characters, even if we're gonna lose them, then I think that just enriches the whole universe as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with that totally. And ultimately, I saw Rogue One 4 times, and like you said earlier, upon each successive viewing for me, I liked it a little bit more. I don't know if that's just familiarity breeds, supposed to be contempt, but in real life, familiarity breeds, you liking things. So, but I stepped more away from that, like, oh, this needs to be in line with the Star Wars lore, and more toward like watching it as a movie. And it does feel like it's connected to Star Wars, Rogue One, that is. I was like watching it going, this is actually a decent, like a war film that feels like related to Star Wars, which is all I think I needed it to be. And ultimately, I felt like, I think it's good. I think it's okay. And I feel like it does, in fact, make Episode 4 better. It makes it a little bit better. Like, not that you could make
it
that. It
definitely does.
It holds reverence for it and holds it up, a little bit, I think.
Oh, man. There's a line. See, I'm pissed that I can't remember it now. There's a line that K2 says pretty early in the film that I was like, oh, that's perfect. I'm going to see if I could find it now.
Yeah, there's some interesting. That's an interesting character that they were. It's kind of an unconventional Star Wars droid, which I thought was pretty cool. That they were taking a little bit of a risk with how he talks and functions. I like the idea. There was another moment where I thought they could have saved K2SO in that movie. I thought they could have brought him back because when he grabbed the other K2 unit and then was programming it, do you remember he like kind of put his little R2D2 thing in it? There's like a brief moment where he's programming another K2. I mean, it's kind of a cheap writing move, but I feel like they could have just had him pop out again as that other, after they, spoiler alert, this is obviously filled with spoilers, but after they killed K2SO, there could have been a cool little moment where he pops back in. He's like, oh yeah, by the way, I just transferred my consciousness to this droid.
Over here.
Yeah.
And that's really interesting because Star Wars, the movies as much didn't get into this, but the books, the extended universe books, play a little bit more. They really dive more into how, like, the fact that R2 never got his memory wiped really made him more eccentric and gave him a personality, and same with C-3PO. And there's a lot of interesting kind of traditional sci-fi things that you could dive into when you're thinking about, like, what is consciousness and what is personality for a droid that could literally transfer its whole programming from body to body, right?
Yeah.
Especially even if it wasn't another K2 droid too. Imagine if K2 became a completely different model and was like, cool, I just transfer myself into there. Also, did you kill that robot? Is that what you did? Like, for the world of Rogue One, where you are in the beginning, at least, really playing around with the ethics of these things, like that would be an interesting kind of conversation to have. One of the lines really quickly that he said was, "Congratulations, you're being rescued." I don't know if that's my hitter line, but it's when they first get Jyn Erso and she's fighting back and all that stuff. And it's interesting to me because it's the Rebel Alliance thinking that they know best for everybody, even somebody who wants nothing to do with them in that moment. And I think it's a poignant idea that could have been extended in the film, that maybe not everybody's on board with the Rebel Alliance.
Interesting. Like, what would you have liked to have seen as far as that? Like some sort of like turncoats in the other direction, like plants from the Empire in the Rebel Alliance, or?
Well, it's just that, in any war, unfortunately, there's collateral damage and there are people that are stuck in the middle, right?
Yeah.
Like, there will inevitably obviously be people who benefit from Imperial rule.
Right.
Or people who want nothing to do with either, etc. It makes me think about Cuba, for example, right?
I thought you were going to say the current administration.
Well, there's that. But lately I've been listening to some Cold War podcast stuff, so Cuba's on the brain. But like when when Castro took over in Cuba, part of the reason there's this huge conservative Cuban a population in Florida is because the people that were there that were wealthy and doing well under kind of like the previous, we'll say dictator, they left. And like Castro saw himself, he and his brother and Che Guevara were like, we're revolutionaries. We're trying to free Cuba from this, and this. But like there were literally people there who were doing well, who were cashing out, were doing great, and were getting money from American businesses that were coming to try to build their casinos and shit like that. Those people, if you're now a prisoner under the Castro regime or whatever like that, you pull them out and they're like, yeah, cool, thanks, but like we actually want to go back to the way it was before. Like we were cool with the imperial rule or whatever that was. Right. We actually don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah.
Even if
it's like that Stockholm syndrome. It's what people are used to.
And people also just like, there's people who just don't want any trouble.
Yeah.
Which is so interesting. Just like, I just want to keep my head down. I want to do my thing. I got my moisture evaporators. I'm not trying to like deal with this shit. Right. Whoever, like, like Tatooine is run by the Hutts. So there's always gangsters and there's always some lord of power there.
Yeah. And you just
want whoever it is, it doesn't matter. You're just like, I don't care who the fucking lord of power is. Just like, don't get me involved in a rebellion that's going to get me fucking killed.
Right. Yeah. And that's the compelling thing about Luke Skywalker, because he has a dream of leaving that small town and being out of the way, and his aunt and uncle are like, please keep your head down and just follow the orders. I mean, the thing about The Mandalorian that I do love is that we are exploring that area of a power vacuum, which is so much what I wanted the sequel trilogy to be. I wanted this feeling of maybe there are Mandalorians over here trying to seize power. Maybe there's like remnants of the Empire trying to seize power. Maybe now they're trying to establish a new republic, and there's like all this fighting. But once we jump into Episode 7, The Force Awakens, it's just like, nope, there's a new republic and everything's great. And it's just like, or sort of. I mean, there's the First Order, which is trying to seize power again. But
yeah, it's weird because we see the thing about Force Awakens that is frustrating is they're trying so hard to replicate a New Hope that we get a situation where there's presumably a new republic, but there's not like a New Republic army.
Right.
Like there's apparently peace and prosperity, but it's, it's not like, the United Nations exists and there's this coalition of army of people who are like, we remember the Empire. We don't want that to happen again.
Right. Yeah.
Like when we see everything, when we go to, why can't I remember what Rey's planet is?
Detroit.
Detroit. When we go to Detroit, right?
Jakku.
We get Jakku. Yeah. We get the sense that there's already kind of first order control. Mm-hmm. When we go to all these various star systems, there's first order control. Like they're the dominant power player in all these other different places. And then the only time we don't see that is when they unleash Starkiller Base and destroy, like 4 or 5 systems of apparently prosperous, whatever. But it's this massive galaxy, and there's apparently a new republic or something like that. Yeah. Hopefully, and like there's no retaliation for that. It's up to this small group of rebels again.
Right.
And like that's what's a little confusing about the sequel trilogy. Whereas, like you said, whether it's a power vacuum, which would have been so fascinating, be like, the Empire's in shambles, leading various different groups to try to vie for galactic control. That's fascinating.
Yes.
Or if there's like a standard New Republic, and it's like the prequels. Like the prequels did a good job with the Old Republic and being like, here's the order. Like you said, like what would be the political realities of a completely a fallen empire?
And what I do love about The Mandalorian and how they handled that too is that, the New Republic, the X-Wings for the New Republic are the police, and that having that limbo, and also painting the New Republic as not all good. It's like, well,
yes.
And that's why it's an old west. It's a western. The Mandalorian. He's kind of going around and just fending for himself.
That's what I love about it. Give me
Yeah,
that. I want, so much of the original kind of Star Wars doctrine and inspiration comes from westerns and like Ronin samurai style films and things like that.
yeah,
Like it's so nice to see Mandalorian just really lean heavy into that again.
love it. I absolutely. That's what I really liked about the first episode of this season was just it was like it is straight up being what it knows that
No hesitation.
exactly. It was just like George Lucas was so explicit about what it should be. He was like, I love Kurosawa, I love spaghetti westerns, I love Flash Gordon. Let's push this. Let's all smush this together and through the George Lucas filter. And I think the cool thing about how Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni are working with The Mandalorian is that George Lucas is he's within earshot all the time. I think they keep him around as kind of a good luck charm to sort of get his tacit blessing on whatever they're doing. And I think that that's what's reading is that there seems to be a reverence to how, you mentioned earlier how The Force Awakens was trying to replicate episode 4 so much instead of trying to understand what George Lucas's vision was of what this world is. I think they've sort of neglected that George Lucas had a very specific it's hard to recreate that guy's vision, but the vibe, it's like I don't think The Force Awakens nailed the vibe of episode 4, but it tried to copy the structure of it, really.
Man, it's so interesting to hear you talk about George Lucas with such reverence. Rightfully so, I think. But because like after the prequels, people were just shitting on George Lucas. And if there's anything like look, the prequels are not the best films. I'm not going to come out here and say that, but what they are is consistent, and there's a clarity of vision. Yes, the acting is largely bad. Yes, the dialogue is largely bad. Like there's a lot of things, like you can nitpick those films to death, but that trilogy knows what if all the in between stuff is kind of awkwardly executed and whatnot. It knows 100% what it is.
Yeah.
And as we talked about with the sequels, there's just like a major identity crisis along them.
And that George Lucas, I always say, he has original ideas for better or for worse. And we saw what the worst was with the prequels. But guess what? There's lots of ideas still. He might need a better producer or an editor or someone else to direct his films for him. But, the ideas are there. So Christiana Hooks says she loved the first episode of this season. What's up, Ange? She's joining us in the chat. Jen Nafir says, honestly, I think I blocked out a lot of the inconsistencies because I was just excited for a female lead in the Star Wars universe. Same with episode 7, 8, and 9. I guess that's Rogue One, and talking about Rey as well. So Jin and Rey.
I mean, look, that's 100% valuable, and I think when I look at when I look at the Star Wars sequels, Rogue One, and even like on DC or in the comic book movies, the comparison between like Wonder Woman and Captain Marvel, right? It is 100% exciting and frankly really long time coming that we get women taken seriously in these lead roles in these types of worlds, right?
And in the government, by the way, first female vice president elected.
Let's go.
In the history of 4-year history of this country. But go on.
Yeah, no, that too. God, again, long overdue.
Yeah.
And the thing that makes it tricky is that you see that element of it, and it makes you just want to cheer, like, just from the depths of your soul for these films. And it's like I said, I get more critical of the things I think that have the most potential. That's when I get more mad. Yeah. When I'm like, okay, you created this great character in Rey, or you created this super interesting character in Jyn Erso. and then you didn't like fulfill that promise. Like there's so much we could have had from both of these characters if you leaned into the initial bold step you wanted to take and didn't scale back for safety.
Right. That is truly frustrating because, and that ultimately is the frustration I feel with the sequel trilogy. It's just, there was such a promise of the new characters being being as great as the original. I mean, that's the setup, right? They're like, it's going to be all a younger cast. We're going to include the older cast, but we're going to create the new iconic characters. And I think they just fell short of that.
Well, it seemed so clear. Well, it seemed like they wanted to do a passing of the baton initially, and then there was some hesitance about that. And then when we get into Last Jedi, like that is hardcore. If that direction was completely fulfilled, we might have seen something really fascinating and new. Instead, they wanted to kind of lean back into the old of Star Wars and things like that. And again, I understand that decision. It's just like we saw what that resulted in.
Yeah, it was very divisive. I like Rian Johnson's vision in Episode 8. I like it in a vacuum. I know why people don't like it. I understand that there are many gripes about the subplots in that film. But as a whole, that movie I like on the whole. There are iconic moments in that are some of the best in all of Star Wars.
Yeah.
I think. When you got Luke Skywalker walking through the burning blast doors to go face down the First Order with a laser sword, like he says in the beginning of the movie that he's not going to do, ultimately we find out it's his projection. But still, that moment for real is such a great moment. You're like, all right, here comes Luke. He's going to be a badass. And for me, that was the most badass thing he could have done, which was to not fight. To be like, look, I'm a Jedi. I'm not going to fight you. I'm not here to fight you. I'm not here to do that. I'm here to be a Jedi and be a peacekeeper. But there's many issues with that film but I agree with you. Had they followed through in that direction and leaned harder into that world, which was Colin Trevorrow's original screenplay. I don't know if you read it or
I haven't.
Check it out. There's a dude who got a leaked copy of it, and he kind of goes through it beat for beat. He goes through the entire screenplay that Colin Trevorrow's original screenplay was when Carrie Fisher was still alive, so it was going to include her a little bit more. But I believe they scrapped it entirely, not just because Carrie Fisher died, but because J.J. Abrams took over, and he was like, I want screenwriting credit, or in order for this to be my film, I need to gut this script enough, 51% or whatever. What are the rules for that as far as like the Screenwriters Guild?
I don't know exactly, but it is something that's pretty substantial to get credit as a writer on it. His motivations or anything like that. He's made some incredible films. He's made some films that haven't worked out so well. Alias is still one of my favorite series of all time.
That's a pretty good series.
But God, I just, like I said, I can't and give us something that harkens back to, like, oh my God, like that's crazy. Also, I want to be clear. I absolutely love Captain Marvel. I think Captain Marvel is so good and gets so many things right, including a character that stays, a lead female character that stays consistent to herself while having growth and allowing for the little twists at the end to make you feel like, oh shit, I got the fulfillment of what the promise of what the movie was.
Yes, indeed. Let me just catch up on some of these comments here. Escape from Post says, imagine being the film franchise that told you both Vader was Luke's father and Palpatine was Rey's grandfather. Yeah, I can't get over that personally. It's such a cop-out. Let Kylo Ren be the supreme leader in the next movie. I know that they were, there's always this idea of being the big bad, but have him be the big bad in the next one.
Yeah, The the thing that I loved, absolutely loved about The Last Jedi was how much work they did on Kylo Ren. Kylo Ren was interesting, but almost a bit of a caricature in Force Awakens. You know, at almost necessarily so, given what the length of that movie and all the shit they had to do to kind of like catch you up and do everything. But they really dug into him so much more in the second film, and his defining moment of like killing Snoke and being like, I'm about to take this over by myself, was one of the best things, frankly, in all of Star Wars.
Yeah,
You know, like,
that's a great scene as well, visually too.
it's gorgeous. It's
Yeah,
gorgeous. And
everything's
like,
burning
I
around
love
them.
red. So seeing like the red troopers and everything and them
Yeah.
going back and forth in that like room was just
And everything's
fant-
just like burning, and it's like symbolic. It's visually beautiful.
Yes.
It all makes sense. It's such a great. They're fighting back to back as one.
It's gorgeous.
Yeah.
And I can't wait for the end of the next movie because it's these two dueling it to the
Yes.
fucking end.
Yes, exactly.
And by Rob, so when I go into, so you know how I said my two criteria, right? What is the promise and is it internally consistent? When you do like a really interesting kind of universal theme idea, but then when you leave the last just saying
Yes.
is it's like we're gonna see the inevitable collision of Rey and Kylo, and because they did so much to undermine Last Jedi and Rise of Skywalker, it's kind of like it just like kind of undercuts that promise.
Yeah. It's such a weird trilogy that just fights itself the whole way. It keeps setting things up and cutting them down, replaced with
Yeah.
Lawrence Kasdan and J.J. Abrams for the Force Awakens. And but I think that there's always a way. There could have been a way in an episode 9 to bring everything to a satisfying conclusion from those
sure.
first two movies, but I think they were like that. They again, it was the orders got handed down to J.J. to make it what it was, which
Disney can get things right. Like the way that Marvel has gone, frankly, to me, I think is the biggest achievement in cinema history. To have 20 plus films, all like didn't work out for this franchise because they felt the weight of Star Wars upon them.
right. You know, I was thinking about this very thing. Marvel executed so brilliantly Endgame. Everything came to a head in like such a powerful and satisfying. Made it early on. They were smart because they were like, okay, now we're gonna have Guardians of the Galaxy. That's gonna be in outer space. That's gonna be nutty, but it's also gonna tie in, and we're gonna have this over here and this over here, and you're gonna slowly get accustomed to all of these varying little concepts in the history of movies as far as blockbusters go, and so it's like the greatest franchise. And it's the worst. And it's the worst. It's the most disappointing. We've got so many disappointing movies from Star Wars.
Yeah.
Like,
because while The Mandalorian, again, is not the main thread, I think what they should be learning is that we just love the universe.
yeah.
And
We
you
just
could
wanna
tell
hang
us
out there.
any interesting story in that universe, and we're in. It just
Yeah.
doesn't matter anymore. And it's almost like it's a relief that the Skywalker saga is complete. And please don't ever bring it back, because now if you want to give us the, I don't know, Boba Fett movie, if you want to give us an Ahsoka series, if you want whatever it is, right? If you want to do, like, there was a book I read a while. Oh God, I was a teen. That was just about the various bounty hunters, and it had like 5 or 6 sections, or whatever, and it followed different bounty hunters and just told kind of stories about them. Any one of those is really interesting. In fact, if they did an anthology series where they were like, cool, like this is the bounty hunter series, we're just going to do 8 episodes of different bounty hunters and how they intersect within the whole
100% the gospel. Because I'm like, I'm straight up like, guys, you got Star Wars. You got the property Star Wars.
Yeah.
You can literally do anything You can literally say anything. You say like, this guy's got garbage cans for legs or whatever. What, I don't know. Like, you just, this guy shoots fire from his elbows. Whatever it is, we're gonna be like, okay, cool. That's a new thing now. We get it.
Yeah.
Now that's part of the new lore, and we're gonna go with that. And I kind of think that because the new sequel trilogy relied so heavily on recycling tropes and bringing back all of the things. My friend calls them member berries. So
yeah.
it's like,
Shout
remember
out
that?
to South Park.
Yeah, exactly. It's just, remember that? Remember this? Remember that? It's so true that they.
That's what the Mandalorian has going for it.
Right.
And I think that's a really valid point. Star Wars has actually been pretty successful in television between the animated shows and that. And I wonder if their kind of like new emphasis on streaming will help that.
Yeah.
Because, with this is
There's
what's
a
so
void
fun about
right now,
TV.
because Game of Thrones, it also ended last year was a crazy series of endings. It was Game of Thrones. It was the end game sort of final nexus point until they do the next thing. And it was Star Wars. So it's the three of those franchises in effect ending. So now it's like there's this vacuum of must-see weekly television like Game of Thrones, which was so hugely epic. And that's what I loved about the first episode of season 2 of The Mandalorian. By the way, just to do a little housekeeping, right after this, in about 20 minutes, we're going to do a live watch party of Mandalorian season 2 episode 3 on the Discord. So if you guys want access to the Discord, just remember you can sign up on Twitch and pledge on the Patreon. Evan, thank you very much. You are a pledger on the Patreon, so you have exclusive access to the Discord. And if you're just watching on whatever, just follow me on Instagram, follow me on Twitch. You can go to AristotleFullThrottle.com, follow me there. But yeah, so there's a void. There is a vacuum now. There's a power vacuum symbolically, and I think they can do that also sort of symbolically or literally in The Mandalorian. They can step into that Game of Thrones epicness, because that first episode of the season 2 was
incredible,
slaying a dragon. They just went ahead and slayed a dragon, and I was like, this is what we like.
I want to highlight something else though, because part of what Mandalorian, especially that first episode, got done so well was we're diving into new cultures. I don't know if you're a Trekkie at all, but part of what's so fun about Star Trek is you meet new cultures and you're seeing kind of how the friction between different cultures clashing up against each other. And Mandalorian can communicate more than just grunts, all these things, right? It does so well of exploring those things. And when you think about Game of Thrones specifically, right? The dragons are fun, the magic's fun, but what to me personally is the most fun is seeing like House Lannister go up against House Stark, seeing what's going on with the Dothraki trying to like get to city, and everybody treats them like shit because they're brown and they ride horses, right? Those types of things are so fun, and they're ways to kind of like poke at ourselves a little bit. And I think The Mandalorian is like primely poised to do that. And hopefully more of Star Wars kind of follows that lead going forward and really kind of using the breadth of the universe to kind of do some self-examination.
100%. I like to say that, like Game of Thrones, I would like to see The Mandalorian or Star Wars television shows to have lots of sects. Not sex, but sects. S-E-C-T-S. I would like to see lots of sects in those shows so that you can have these groups that we actually care about, and they all are kind of grayish, and we like some things about them, we don't like some things about them. We hate this character, and then we learn to love them, and then vice versa with other characters. That's the thing that I find the most satisfying on long-form stories. Is like, 2 seasons ago I hated this guy and now he's the coolest guy, or 2 seasons ago she was the greatest and now I hate her. So that's the fun part, I think, for sure.
And what's actually going to your point about how you think Rogue One made episode 4 better. I think that first episode of Mandalorian season 2 made I want to say episode 2. I don't remember if it's episode 2 or 3 better. Because having a more fleshed out Tusken Raider people where we're like, yeah, here's their culture. They just have needs and wants like anybody else.
Yeah.
And then we see Anakin go fucking slaughter them.
Right.
Like, those aren't just like nameless, faceless savages in the desert now.
Maybe they had their reasons. That's all we're saying.
They have strict immigration policies and child separation in effect, and that's just kind of what it was.
They're not all perfect.
They had their Trump.
No, it's true. Just to have an actual level of depth to those characters is something that. Sorry about the guy starting up his lawnmower outside.
I've had people doing like a stomp challenge behind me, so I'm hoping that's not just showing up in the mic too much.
Fair enough. I was going to say something about just the different groups, the different aspects of Mando. Let's see, we got a question here. Mando and his "This is the way." Really, never take off his helmet. So, yeah, I guess
you don't want to talk about that. That's for after this.
Okay, yeah.
That's episode 3 stuff.
All right, yeah, I don't know episode 3 yet. No spoilers for episode 3 because we're gonna do a live watch party on Discord, and I will be watching it for the first time with y'all in about 10 to 15 minutes if you want to join. And yeah, let's scroll up. I saw you guys were mentioning papyrus font typeface. I wholeheartedly reject that. Don't ever mention papyrus around me. We had a talk about fonts yesterday, and some are just ugly. Like
that is true.
Comic Sans and papyrus. Marvel is also doing better than DC in Fireman 89's opinion. Yeah, I think. Why is that? Is it because of the reverse engineering of DC that they're trying to do? They're trying to kind of too little, too late, go backward.
Yeah, I just think I just think DC's been impatient when it comes down to it. I think they were so eager to get on board with the Marvel-esque team-up films that had been kind of commonplace pre-Justice League that they were like, oh, we need to get there as fast as possible because that's what people want to see. And Marvel, to their credit, was really smart. They took their time. They plotted out a full plan, and they were like, cool, we're going to release these solo films first, build up the depth of the universe. And like you said, they did a good job of hitting the different areas of the universe with the different characters, right?
Yeah.
Captain America is living in a completely different world than Tony Stark. Completely different world than Thor, whatever, right? So when you see them come together, you kind of have a little bit of an understanding of the broader various aspects separately, and you bring them together, and you're like, oh shit, I know what they're going through right now, because like, why is this god with this hammer here, but this techie guy, whatever, right?
Yeah.
All those things. And they basically did Man of Steel and then a team-up movie, and they did Batman versus Superman.
Yeah.
They didn't even do a Batman movie in between. Wonder Woman movie in between.
Yeah.
Wonder Woman came after. And it's at the bottom. At the end of the day, I think it was just impatience. There's a lot you could say to critique the various films. I think there's plenty to critique in different ways, but the bottom line to me just felt like they wanted to get to Justice League so fast.
Yeah. Ange is not having it. There's still redeeming factors in a lot of those movies. I do like a lot of the images. I think Zack Snyder kind of works backward from images a lot of times.
100%. That's so obvious.
Yeah, he's just like, I got this thing. I know what it's got to look like. How do we get here? And sometimes it's Superman and Batman and Wonder Woman and the Green Lantern.
I am less a Superman fan. But that is a much longer discussion to be had.
We might have to save that for next time. For sure.
But yeah, I think it's not that the DC movies are necessarily atrocious. It's that they leave a little bit to be desired because they just feel like they're in a rush to me.
Yeah, they do feel compressed. Like I felt at the end of Batman versus Superman, however long it is pretty long. I thought,
Yeah.
I'm like, now I'm supposed to be like invested in all of these characters. I do like when Wonder Woman shows up during that final battle. I think
She's great in it. Yeah.
And
she's the highlight of Batman versus Superman for sure.
100% agree with that. She really does inject energy into that final battle and color. Quite frankly, it was a very gray battle. But Evan, this has been an amazing, lively discussion. What is your final word on Rogue One? What would you say? We've been all over the Star Wars map.
God, man. My final word on Rogue One is fantastic idea. Wish it lived up to the promise.
Fair enough. I think it is decent on its own and does, in fact, for me, just accentuate how good Episode 4 is, how good it is. And I don't know, we might have a differing opinion on that. This is one last question I have for you, and then we're going to jump over to the Discord. If you guys are interested, you can pledge to the Patreon. It's patreon.com/Aristotle Full Throttle, and then you get access to the Discord where we watch Mandalorian every Friday right now. But my question is, that scene in the end of Rogue One with Darth Vader. Now, how do you think? Because for me, the only problem I have with that scene, because it's visually stunning, it's great to see Darth Vader and how powerful he is. How does that play for us as an audience to see the villain just dismantling good guys? Like, are we supposed to like that, or are we supposed to hate that? That was the one thing I felt. I'm like, wait a second, this is the bad guy. This is cool. Should I be thinking this is cool, or should I be like, oh no, this is bad. This guy's terrifying. Or is it both?
So look, here's the thing. Star Wars. This is why Star Wars is so difficult, because the feelings, the emotional reaction of the audience around Star Wars exists beyond what happens in the story and on the screen. Darth Vader is a celebrity. Darth Vader is a hero as far as Star Wars fans are concerned. He's cool as fuck. He's the biggest badass. He's got the dopest voice, right? Other than at the end of Revenge of the Sith.
Yeah.
Like, he's incredible. So you are supposed to cheer for him there. But like, what's gonna happen to him later.
Right.
But like, it's this weird, confusing, emotional, terrifying moment where in that moment, you see why everybody's shit fucking scared of Darth Vader.
That's
how just having go ahead.
Well, the opening of A New Hope.
Yeah.
Everybody's just like making haste. They're like, get the hell, we gotta go. This guy's coming. Yeah. And it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense to see that scene right before that scene.
Yeah. And so it's this cool thing. I think your response of confusion is actually intended and perfect. Okay. And it's the best thing that Rogue One did. You're supposed to cheer for him because you know who Darth Vader is. And you're seeing the might of his power at the highest level it is ever.
Yeah.
But you're also like, oh, shit. Like, I know why the rebellion is scared of him now.
Yeah. It makes perfect sense.
And that mix of emotion is kind of the best feeling as an audience member, right? When you see a villain, when you see Joker, for example, in The Dark Knight, right? Part of what makes him so compelling is like you kind of buy into his logic from time to time.
Yeah.
And you're like, he is right. Like, getting all hyped up about money and everybody thinks they have their solid rules, but rules aren't solid. Like, that's not crazy to think.
Right.
But then he goes a little farther than you would go, and you're scared of him. And it makes you scared because you're like questioning yourself whether you would buy into that or not.
That's very true. I love the psychology of the Joker. We might have to talk about that next time, because one of my favorite things about the Heath Ledger Joker in The Dark Knight is when they're like, you're crazy, and he's like, I'm not.
Not
and he's just, and you're like, wait a second, Is he crazy or is
Wait,
he
hold
not?
up. Is he? Or is this like
It's such a great
planned out logic? Yeah.
Yeah, and you see that he's always thinking ahead, and I mean, what a great character to have, and what a great guest you are every time. Christiana
Oh,
Hooks
thank you.
says she loves listening to you two talk. More of this combo, please. You will absolutely get more of this combo if Evan is so gracious to come back. I would love to have you back anytime to talk about all these fun things, these nerdy fun things.
Oh man, I would love to come back, man. We have a good time talking, man. That's all it is.
This is great. This is so great. And we always appreciate your insight because you're an active and working TV film writer. So it's really cool to get your like sort of, that was very interesting about Rogue One, about how it's 2 movies. That I never thought of it that way. So I'm going to definitely look for stuff.
Yeah, now when you rewatch it, I'm curious to know if you're going to, because it's one of those things where it's like, I can't unsee that.
Yeah. I think it's permanently it's permanently going to be that from now on, guys. On Twitch, I'm going to raid now. I'm going to go raid Greg's channel because I think my friend David, who I usually watch Mandalorian every week with, along with the watch party, is the guest right now for Mediocre Films. So let's just do a quick raid on our way out here. And guys, follow Evan at Evanistics on all of the platforms, on Instagram, on Twitter. Let's see. Raid. I think it's... How do I do this, Jen the Fierce? I think it's this. Twitch.tv/mediocre films. I think that might be... that might work. All right, guys. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Evan. And if you're around in the next 5 to 10 minutes, we're going to jump on Discord and watch the latest episode. But you've already seen it, so
I have. But I might hop in just to join the chatter a little bit. We'll see.
You're always welcome. Before I disable the chat here, I just want to make sure that we've popped in. Hang on. Hang on, guys. And guys, thank you for joining us on Instagram and did or not. Let's see. This is the most exciting part of the show when I'm trying to figure out.
Of course.
But so in this moment, while I'm checking, what's next for you? What have we got coming up?
Man. Okay, so we're in the fill airtime portion of the show.
Let's stretch for time.
No, man. I have a couple shows I'm working on in development. It's one of those things that's like, development's really weird because you kind of can't talk about it too much. Because like,
fair,
people don't want the idea out there because they want to be the first one to go like sell it or whatever. So I have a couple of those that I've been working on and are going. Yeah, it's wild. But other than that, I'm just watching TV. I'm excited that like some shows are back. This Is Us is back. It's a great show, and they managed to get filming during COVID and like actually somehow navigate all of that to get kind of current relevant shows. So I gotta give them credit. But I've been trying to catch up on some old stuff. You know what I'm actually watching right now? That's like old school. Is I'm watching Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex.
Ah, is that like a spin-off series or? Yeah,
so it's after, I don't know when it came out. I want to say 2005, something like that. Whatever it is. After the I want to say it's a prequel to the like main anime movie. But there's 2 or 3 seasons of it, and lately one of the things I'm writing has to deal with kind of like cyborgs and robots and shit.
Nice.
So I'm really interested. I just kind of got interested in diving back into like cyberpunk type things, and I've been kind of going through my list and trying to see how much I could watch to see really the ideas that are explored and what other people have to say about it.
Huh. Interesting. That's the cyberpunk. I mean, Blade Runner 2049 is very cyberpunk, and
oh yeah,
love the look of that movie. Absolutely.
But what's cool about it, right? So like Blade Runner in '82 kind of set the stage for modern cyberpunk as we understand it. And Blade Runner 2049 kind of did a redefinition because it lets itself get out of the city, right? So much of cyberpunk is the city and the billboards and the neon lights and all that kind of like 80s tech in your face stuff. And it's like, yo, here's the desert of Vegas and here's this dude on a farm, and it kind of lets it get itself away and play with similar colors and motifs, but in different environments, and expand that. And I love what Blade Runner 2049 did with that.
Yeah, it feels like such a huge world to have all those different aspects. Very
and lived in and thoughtful. It's great.
Indeed. Speaking of thoughtful, thank you for your thoughts today. and we're gonna head over. I hope it worked. I hope we successfully rated the channel. But we're gonna go over to Discord right now, everybody, and we're gonna watch The Mandalorian together. So thank you guys for joining us. Thank you, Evan. You're an awesome guest. You have
Aristotle.
So much
come on, man. You're a great host. You're a fun guy. I'm lucky to be on the show, dude.
Oh, come on, man. Well, thanks, man. This is so much fun. It's always a good time when you're here. All right, guys. Thank you for joining us.